Hey everyone, how you doing? It's Patrick from Vicious Computers, and today I'm finally getting a chance to sit down and start working on a few video clips that I'm hoping to edit together to provide the video I've been talking about making for a while, which is going to be covering this stuff. The very first DIY solar system that I designed and built. And it was really unique. I don't think anyone else has really quite copied what I've done, although I've seen people use these concepts in smaller bits and pieces, and that was a part of why I covered it in that little series I did of like Solar Update 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of those were very short, less than a couple of minutes, just like vlog type style clips, and now I'm coming to circle back and give you a more formal coverage of exactly what happened. Going over the concepts, how it was designed, why it was designed, why I bought it, and then getting into the technical of like actual pieces and parts and cost and how it goes together and how it functions. And so I think that that will probably end up being like maybe a 2 or 3 part video series. Starting with this, we'll talk about the birth of the system, why I designed it, what it was for, and then how it came together. Second video, we'll go over the technical bits and actually go survey the systems and get into that stuff. And then maybe a third video for advanced non-standard things such as smart home automations and things where some of my other skills come into play that you might not see other people using in their regular setups. So let's talk about the birth of the system. You can't see all the stuff off the frame here, but in this office right now are 2 EcoFlow Delta 3 Plus units. That was the starting point of everything. I had just recently, you can probably see this, that is a huge APC 2200 UPS. It takes an entire sled of batteries. When I say a sled of batteries, like 8 gigantic, heavy batteries that cost anywhere from $200 to $500 to replace. They're the old lead acid battery technology. And when the power goes off, yes, it keeps my equipment going, but it only gives me an hour or less of runtime. And when I say the price ranges from like 200 to 500 or higher, the 200 is the cheapest of buying just the actual batteries and finding the cheapest batteries I can find, pulling the sled out and manually rebuilding the battery bank, which is not even something you're supposed to do. You're supposed to replace the entire sled. When doing that, every 2 years, I've had to go and replace the batteries again because at least 1 or 2 of the batteries just starts going bad and then it gives me low voltage warnings, etc. When I found out about the EcoFlow units, one of the advertised features was the UPS built in, the uninterruptible power supply, 15 millisecond, kind of in that same realm of what a traditional UPS does. And I was like, this is interesting because I've looked at lithium iron phosphate batteries as UPSs before. I've looked at replacing these batteries with better technology. But because the BMS, the battery management system, doesn't know how to handle it, you can't just swap it out. So I was like, what about replacing the UPS with these? It actually was price smart. I shopped around and I found the Deltas for like $640 on sale. If it cost me $200 to replace the batteries, and I have to do that every 2 years, and these things are supposed to last anywhere from like 15 to 30 years, then I was like, huh, that makes sense. It's already paid for itself just because I replaced the batteries less. And therefore, the expense of buying 3 of those at $600, which is like $1,800 plus taxes and stuff, was actually cheap because it paid for itself up front just by replacing batteries less. So that's how I got started. It was just a UPS replacement. Then I got my hands on them, and anyone who's followed me, my channel, or anyone who knows me in real life, they know that I just don't do anything in small measures. Oh, we got delivery. Let me go see what the delivery is. Amazon. I can see the security cameras from in here, and I hear the dog barking. It's pretty cool too. Let me show it to you. The camera actually tracks everything. So Amazon guy getting tracked through the whole place. I think it's cool. I still got to cover these cameras in detail. So where were we? You just literally, you can't get by without interruptions. I had to wait for my lunch break to do this. I get to have 2 days where I work from home and I get an hour for lunch, and that's my time to film. If they ever take away our time to work from home and our lunch break stuff, like, yeah, I'm not gonna have much time to do these videos. Other than weekends where it's time to actually do these projects and spend time with my wife, so it's hard. But, so, back to what we were talking about before the interruption. The UPS is costing so much for batteries, replace them with these. I got my hands on some new technology, and then once I have my hands on something, I don't do it in any small measures. I always rip any kind of hobby wide open, and I get into it and I take it very serious. So then this ended up becoming the gateway drug for solar. One of the neatest things about these is, hey, I'm saving money because I'm not spending as much on batteries, but that's kind of like an even wash. Now the fact that these can support solar input, I can have them start paying me. So that's when I started researching solar for the very first time. And I started with cheap entry-level stuff. So I went and got eco-worthy panels, and they were the smaller 200-watt ones. I started with, I think they're 200-watt all black type-in panels because it looked really nice. And I figured if they ever ended up on a roof or something, nobody's going to even really see them. They'll match the roof. And then I ended up buying some of their 195-watt bifacial panels because I wanted to try out the bifacial technology. That led to getting my first builds for the solar panel mounts, and that went through several iterations, everything from single stands to movable stands to, and you'll see that in the next video when we get to like the actual build. But it just kept getting upgraded and upgraded and upgraded. And before I knew it, now I'm building a whole separate system that's going to run the entire house, which will be a whole separate series of videos. But the neat thing is this system will run in tandem with the entire home system. The way this was designed was a DIY job for a person just like me and you that does not have a license as an electrician, who doesn't want to go pull permits, who doesn't want to pay for a professional install. This would be like an off-grid, but it's actually grid-tied system because these UPSs, these power stations, they can plug into the wall and take power from your grid, pass it through to your load, but they can still take solar at the same time. The solar never touches the grid. It's only connected by the battery. It's called a DC coupled system. So it's a way for you to make a semi-grid tied system without the expense and the complications and the legalities of an actual grid tied system. But both good and bad, it becomes an edge system, meaning these things exist in the rooms where the devices are, instead of like a big inverter that's installed in the garage or in the shed that runs the entire house, or some kind of breakout panel. So with these on the edge, the cool thing is each one of these has its own circuit back to the main panel. This is a breaker, that's a breaker. There's one out there running the movie setup, that's on its own breaker, meaning each one of those can pass 15 amps of power through to the device. I can tell you right now, if I had an EcoFlow Pro or Ultra and I was trying to do the same setup, and it was in this office and it was plugged into the wall, and then I lost solar power and I had to use grid power to power everything, it wouldn't work because the bigger devices like the Pro 3 or the Ultra would be plugged into a single outlet, which means it only has 15 amps of power from the grid, and this uses more than 15 amps of power. My office has to be on two separate breakers because of how much power I use in here. So it became actually smarter to buy the small units instead of the big units, and that's what I did. But then the big units let you use big solar, the big units let you use big batteries, and it let you scale, and you can't do that with the small units until I designed it. And that's exactly what happened, and that's what's behind me on the wall. Victron equipment, there's Victron charge controllers, and there's big batteries right here behind me. These Delta 3s now have access to 6,000 watts of solar and 22,000 kilowatt or 22,000 watt hours of capacity, not including their own internal batteries, just by building a system around them. And it's been functioning great because the cost of everything, you know, we said $1,800 for the Deltas, and these things are about $200, and then the wires. I'll do all the math later, but I had already calculated my return on investment of being less than 3 years for this system. I am generating about 25,000 watt hours of electricity a day and using it to run my office. So this entire office, server rack, big computer, everything in here has not used any electricity from the grid in months. And then when we watch TV at nighttime in the big movie theater setup, we have the ability to run that on the same solar system with the third Delta unit. So this semi-hybrid DC coupled system is cool because we get the benefits of the whole home setup at a smaller scale, and we can expand it as we go. Again, we'll cover the details on how that happens in the next video. This is just the concepts, right? So UPSs turned into solar. Solar started growing as a hobby. Wanted to learn how to do things to be cost effective. Return on investment means two things: figure out how to make money or figure out how to save money. And those two things come together for your return on investment. One of the smartest things I did to save a lot of money on the system was not buy anything from Anker, from EcoFlow, from Bluetti, from anyone who builds the all-in-one systems, because they become incredibly expensive, especially when you scale them to the point where you support an entire house. The small units, I think, are kind of worth it because they can be used as portable power stations. Obviously, I do photography and stuff. I used to carry 1,000 batteries for my flashes and for my cameras and for my lights, and some of my lights don't even support battery power, and I had to buy more expensive battery powered lights. Now I can just take a couple of power stations with me and charge or run all my gear on any site. So they're valuable for a lot of things outside of just saving money or backing up a power system at home. So they're versatile, they're cool, but I've learned a lot from my journey so far. The EcoFlow, kind of like Ubiquiti, has a big fan base. I think almost all the companies do, but I think EcoFlow has the biggest fan following, although I'm just now kind of getting into Anker's stuff. So, you know, it's hard to go in there and share good information because the fans are going to bash you for trying to beat the system. When they see that there's a 22,000 watt hour battery bank attached to this for less than 1/8 of the price that they can buy EcoFlow expansion batteries, they just don't swallow that information very well. And I get it. Either you want to justify your purchase to yourself and it makes you feel bad that someone kind of outsmarted you, or you're even beyond that, you're justifying it to yourself and you don't even know that you're doing it because you're like, well, it's really inconvenient. You have to hook it up yourself and it's not portable. And it's like, really, no, these batteries are just as portable and just as easy to hook up as the OEM batteries. Instead of plugging in a cable here and plugging in a cable there, you just take two cables and screw them on, and you can even make your own Anderson connectors, which I'll be doing in a video soon. So it's like the whole DIY thing is not as DIY as people think it is. Not when it comes to this kind of stuff. Yeah, if you're doing a full house, panels on the roof situation, it is a big thing. But even for the EcoFlow system, it's still a big thing. You are bound by the same code requirements for rapid shutdown and pulling permits and doing all of that extra work and all that extra expense. And don't even get me started if you buy the smart home panel, which means you have to get an electrician to install a panel, which is going to cost you more money than installing an inverter. So it's like, people are not thinking it through financially. And so what is your goal with the solar? Was it to have backup power or to save money, or both? And if it's to save money, don't touch the all-in-one systems. You're already doing yourself a disservice. You will save money by piecemealing and doing a DIY system. Next month, I'll be building my first DIY battery, and they're getting so good now. That will be the best way to save money if you're wanting to go that avenue. Building your own big batteries is even cheaper than buying these cheaper third-party batteries. So, but yeah, so I think that's long enough of rambling doing this video today. We bought initially because replacing UPSs to save money, and then that became a hobby, which then started the solar journey. The solar journey became a whole process of learning about the technology and learning how to hack the technology. As a creator, as an engineer, I'm always trying to think outside the box and find new creative solutions instead of just being a consumer and throwing money at everything. And then that led to seeing the benefits of solar, starting to learn a lot more about the codes, the permits, the tax money. That's still, the 30% tax credit is still live this year. And that kind of put some heat under my butt to get the whole home wired up with solar before that tax credit goes away, because 30% is a lot of money when you're talking about $20,000-$30,000. And then I try to become like a subject matter expert. I'm not the guy who knows it all, but definitely when I'm in the groups every single day answering people's questions, I've definitely gotten to the point that I know more than the average person. And everyone who's come to my home now in a professional capacity, whether it be the HVAC guys or the solar guys, and they're talking with me, they're like, you really, really, really know your stuff. Like, you know more than me about this stuff. And that's kind of cool that they respected me that way, and they noticed it and they just picked up on it. What I don't know though is like all the codes. I'm not an electrician. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. And I'm not a solar installer, and I'm not an HVAC installer. I don't know anything about the codes and the permits and that process. So that's why this DIY system was built around not needing any of those. I only have one thing I've done that probably maybe required a permit, and we'll get to that on the next video. So anyways, this was Patrick from Vicious Computers. I'm hoping this video served some purpose, and I think the next video will be a little bit more entertaining for those who really want to understand how the system works. But again, putting this and that together would have been too long. So here's our introduction, and I'll see you next time.